What's up, guys? How are you? Happy Friday. Welcome into another episode of the Daily Juice Podcast with me, Matt Perrault, at Sports Talk Matt. That being my Twitter account. This podcast being brought to you by omahasteaks.com, and you guys can go and use the code JUICE at checkout to save $30 off the end of season sale going on right now, site-wide, half off at omahasteaks.com. Promo code JUICE saves you $30 at checkout. Minimum purchase may be required. Okay, I know you guys don't listen and watch this podcast to hear me rant, but I want to do a quick little conversation piece here at the top. So yesterday was 0-3, bad day, kind of bad breaks. I don't think, not all three of the bets were bad. Arizona was the bad bet. That game got away. It was the worst loss in the Ted Boyle history of him being the coach of Colorado. 47 points. It was just like unbelievable. But in the game, I told you guys to bet the under 168, so we kind of washed out on that. Other two bets, Merrimack was up 5 when a three-pointer went down with a minute to play. If that shot misses, we're probably covering the 7 with free throws. That was frustrating on the Merrimack. And then Michigan had a shot at the buzzer to send the game into overtime. Missed it, so the game didn't go into overtime. That's just kind of the breaks, the way things have been running for me over the last couple of weeks. And I'm not going to sit here and tell you that it's good. It's horrible. It's awful. It's been bad. But more here, just let me say something quickly here as I set it up. So just being on kind of the wrong side, I should have been on Arizona minus 11.5. I was scared to lay that many points, but that was a predictable outcome. We saw that coming with Arizona scoring. I thought if they scored 90, the game would go over. I didn't think Colorado would be just completely blitzed from the get-go there by Arizona. But now you see why I bet Arizona to win the national championship. Okay, so that 11-1 ticket, you should feel pretty good about the 11-1 ticket with Arizona. The Michigan game was somewhat frustrating, but Minnesota was the number one team ATS going into the game. They were 12-1. I wanted to bet Minnesota, but I had people in my ear who I trust and respect, and I talked it out with them, and I kind of figured it was going to be a better bet to go with the over. It wasn't. Could have hit. Probably should have hit. If Michigan gets that layup, we go to overtime, and then it's 75-75, and we're going over, but it didn't happen, so it missed. I'm not making excuses for the plays. That's not what I'm bringing this up for. That's one day. It's not a big deal. But on Twitter, I was going back and forth with somebody just about he said, you're a good guy. I like the podcast, but don't do the butt thing with me. Okay. Don't do the butt thing. I get annoyed with the idea because either you're in with this or you're not. And I feel the same way on the Discord channel. Either you're part of this community or you're not. And if you're here just to start trouble, then I don't really have any time for you. Because there are good times that will be here. And if you've been with this podcast for a long time, you've seen really fun runs. But I don't represent myself as anything else except a guy who loves gambling, who has been lucky enough to be around sports bettors, to learn a little bit, to have fun making picks and plays, and someone who gets far more enjoyment about being right than I am about winning any money. And I've said that from the get-go. If you think you're listening to this podcast to get rich, you're listening and watching the wrong podcast. That is not what this is. I'm not going to beat down your bookie. I'm not going to put you in the penthouse. I'm not going to let you quit your job, okay? 11 versus 10 built this. Might be the best line I've ever heard in sports betting. Chris Andrews, who runs the South Point, said that to me and Dave Sharapan on my other show. And I've used that in my brain now ever since I heard it. Because someone on Twitter X said, in November, I won about 20 units. I was up 45 units heading into December. High watermark for the year. I gave back 25 units. And he said, how did you give back 25 units in a month? And I said to him, this is set up for that to happen. Don't you understand? 11 versus 10 built all of this. It is really hard to climb the mountain. And it's really easy to fall off. And it's really easy to fall down. That's why I preach bankroll management. That's why I preach about flat wagering. That's why I preach about being conservative with your bankroll and not going crazy. Somebody wrote to me and said, I have 1.8 units left in my account. Win tomorrow. No, I'm not going to guarantee a win ever. Ever. Okay? If you bet everything we played last year, you were up 20 units. I'm proud of that. Okay? I'm not proud of December, but I'm proud of the whole year we put together last year. And we're 4-6 to start 2024? I got weeks, months, quarters left to go, guys. This is a free podcast. You can do what you want with it, right? If you want to be a jerk, fine. I'm either going to block you or I'm going to ask for you to be run off the Discord channel. And there's some people that aren't part of this, okay? But so many of you are. And I'm thankful for so many of you who have reached out and said, hey, don't worry about it. Hey, how about this bet? Hey, how about that bet? I could not be more thankful for all of you guys who feel like you have some ownership of the Daily Juice community. And you're like, hey, Matt, come on. I'm with you. I'm as mad about this as you are about what I have been doing over the last couple of weeks. But I don't stress over it the way that a lot of you guys do because you're looking for someone to tell you what to bet. And so then you've got someone to blame versus just blaming yourself, right? Like you can do this and some of you think you can, and that's awesome. Start your own podcast. I've said it to a number of you. Start your own podcast. I'm 3 years down. This is the 4th year I have hosted the Daily Juice, okay? This podcast has been listened to 13 million times on audio alone. Right? That's just audio. Video-wise, remember when we celebrated 1 million? Were you here when we did the 1 million? Were you here when we did the cookie drive and sold cookies to celebrate 1 million listens? How about 5 million? Were you here when we did 5 million and we raised money for the Ronald McDonald House and we sold cookies with Cecilia and TJ's great bakery in Chicagoland? Were you here then? Because a lot of you were, but a lot of you weren't. So that's what I talk about. I talk about the long game. That's what I mean. That's the long game. We're at 13 million now. That's not the views. We do between 5,000 and 8,000 views a day on this video. Okay? Just on the video portion. Audio is an additional 7,000 to 8,000 to 9,000, depending on the day and what's going on in the sports world. Okay, so you got to understand something. This is not easy to do this every single day, 365 days, to bet every day. The mental drain that it takes, it's significant. So again, I know that's not why you guys come in here. Some of you get annoyed when I go off on a rant, but I wanted to get that off my chest here to kind of explain what's going on, because one bad month doesn't hurt me. It shouldn't hurt you. It shouldn't. And if it does, you aren't being conservative enough. You're betting too much. Again, so many of you have asked me, Matt, what is 1 unit? Should be 1 to 3% of your bankroll. All right. If your bankroll is $100, it should be $1 to $3. If it's 1,000, add a 0. If it's 10,000, add a 0. Okay. That's what you should be gambling with. 1 to 3%. So if you're betting with $100 and I go 0-3, you've lost $3. Get the game now. Understand what's going on. You'd have $97 left. You're in the game for a long time. So this is not a get-rich-quick scheme. I'm not going to same-game parlay you guys and get you, a $5 bet to 50,000. I'm not going to hit 40-1 bets. It's slow and it's steady and it's methodical. And we're going to have fun along the way. Losing sucks. There's no debating it. I hate it, but I don't hate it because of the money. I hate it because I'm wrong. And I've been wrong a lot over the last 6 weeks. And it's pissing me off more than you guys know. I'm angry and frustrated about it. But luckily, I've been doing this now for a while. I've been in the sports gambling content space full time for long enough to know, 1, it always changes. And 2, I know my limitations. I know what I am. I know who I am. And I'm always honest. And I'm always going to stand here every morning in front of you guys telling you the truth as to what just happened. It's as transparent and as real and as raw as you're going to ever get. I don't run. I don't hide. I don't lie. I don't scheme. I tell you guys the damn truth as to what's going on. And I've seen it more and more in the last couple of months, probably the last 6 months, more and more people doing what I have been doing for 4 years, which is I love, okay? I've seen more red X's on gambling Twitter than I can remember. It's tremendous. Absolutely love it because that's what it always should have been. We always should have been open and honest and transparent. No one, and I don't mean any, and I mean no one. If you give out picks publicly, you want to celebrate the green check mark, sit there with the red X over and over and over again. Post your record, okay? I'm trying to hit 52%, which is basically what I hit last year, was 52%, okay? By the way, Michigan, they win Monday. Ravens, they go to the AFC Championship game. Going to have a nice little cushion for 2024, okay? Just saying. Future bet with the Steelers already hit. We got some future money coming in that's going to help the bottom line and help make that number look a little prettier. Although I can't figure out whether we're going to apply that money for 24 or 23. It was bet in 23, but it'll cash in 24. So I don't know what that applies to. My gut tells me it'll probably apply to 24 because that's when the ticket cashed. So just my take. Okay. Let's get to the picks. Sorry, I'm 10 minutes in, so I apologize. I'll make this fast. I won't go into long rants. Fade away on this, okay? But here are plays. I'm going to make these personally. This is not official, okay? I think Purdue is going to beat Illinois pretty bad tonight, okay? I'd lay the 9.5 with Purdue. I like them. I would lay the 5.5 with UConn tonight against Butler. I think UConn, is just a better team than Butler. I haven't been all that impressed with Butler, but UConn's been a little bit up and down. They've been a little scary lately, but I think it might be a get-right spot for UConn, but those are not official plays. Two other ones, those two college basketball. Two NBA plays if you want extra. Celtics team total is in play here tonight. It's not up. There's no book anywhere that has it, but first half team total Boston, if it's anywhere around 60, 60.5, 59.5, bet the over. I like Boston to score a lot against Utah in the first half tonight. And the Pacers game against the Atlanta Hawks is the highest total, and it may be the highest total in the history of NBA basketball. It's 262.5. That's not an in-game number. It's a pre-game number. So I don't really know what to do with that, except I'm going to tell you right now, I'm bringing back the NBA player props. It's time to get those rolling again. We are after Christmas, after the new year. We can start betting in, the NBA player props. I'm going to have two of those available for you guys in the Discord channel, bettingpros.com/chat. We're bringing that back here on a Friday. I'm going to try to make a point of it on Fridays to have it available because the NBA slate's pretty good on Fridays. So we need to kind of get, we used to have the parlay every Friday. So because I don't like doing parlays and I don't want to go back to doing a lot of parlays, player props on Fridays will be a thing. I'm going to really try to bring back NBA player props. So I'll have at least two NBA player props for you guys in the Discord channel, in the Daily Juice channel on our Discord, bettingpros.com/chat to get in there if you haven't got in there. Okay, what are the plays? Philadelphia is laying 6 or 6.5. Caesars is at 6 up against the New York Knicks. I'm going to take Philly here. I really have been impressed with Joel Embiid. I've really been impressed with just the way the Sixers have played. They've been tremendous. They're 13-4 ATS at home. New York is 9-10-1 ATS on the road. Against the Eastern Conference, Philadelphia is 17-8, and against the division, they're 6-1. Okay, now New York is 3-2-1 against the division, 12-9-2 against the conference. New York has covered their last two games, both at home, however, against Chicago and Minnesota. The Philadelphia 76ers are going to have a gigantic advantage with Joel Embiid. He's a matchup nightmare for the Knicks. I don't think they're going to be able to stop Joel Embiid. And when the Knicks have been winning, they've been winning and covering. When the Sixers are winning, they're winning and covering. They played Chicago on back-to-back. They lost by 13 on the road. They won by 13 at home. They were on the road against Houston, Orlando, and Miami. They won two of those games, covered the two games that they won. They lost by 6 to Miami on the road, catching 2 points. Against Toronto at home, they laid 8. They won by 10. Against Minnesota, they laid 4. They won by 14. They did lose to Chicago, which seems to be a bugaboo for them, which is weird. They've lost 2 of 3 to Chicago. So that might be a Bulls thing versus a Knicks thing. But home against Detroit, they won by 32, 18. Washington, 45. Atlanta, 11. They lost to the Celtics on the road, but they covered, laying 6 there. So it's a little strange. This is the first time that these two teams are playing this late in the year, but this is the first time that Philly will play New York. Again, New York has won 2 games in a row, but against on the road, they were catching 4 against Indiana. They lost by 14. They were laying 1 against Orlando on the road. They lost by 9. Against OKC, they were catching 3.5. They lost by 9. I'm going to lay the 6 points here. Philadelphia, -6 for 1.1 units. Bet number 2, Cleveland and Washington. You can bet the over in this game if you want, but it's high. It's 240.5. It's a big number, okay? The team total for the Cavaliers is 125, okay? So if you go to 124.5 and go over, it's juicy. If you go to 126.5, it gets a little more juicy. It gets a little more on the plus price side of things. But if you go to DraftKings, DraftKings lets you shop, okay? You can shop team totals for DraftKings. Washington just played against Cleveland. Cleveland scored 140 points against them. Now, you can go, Matt, this is, they're going to play defense. It's going to be different. It's not going to look the same. Okay. Over 124.5 is -130. Over 126.5 is even money. Okay. -150 for 123.5, -170 for 122.5. This is all for the Cavaliers team total here. Again, you can bet the over. Why? Washington gives up 126.5 points per game. That's worst in the NBA. Cavaliers score 114.5 points per game at home, by the way. So you combine that, and that's what you get to the total of this game, which is, pretty high, which is we're going to see what this thing closes at, but it's 240 right now. My gut tells me maybe 241, 242. I'm worried about the Wizards. I'm worried about whether or not the Wizards are going to score. If you look at the points that they have scored recently, they scored 101 in the last game against Cleveland, which obviously is not great. The game went over by 1.5. We bet the over for Washington and Cleveland. We bet the game over, and we get that game right. They scored 140 points. Only 101 for Washington. 126 against Atlanta, 110 against Brooklyn, 102 against Toronto, 119 against Orlando, 118 against Golden State, 118 against Portland, 131 against Sacramento, 108 against Phoenix, okay? So it's kind of a roller coaster as to how many points Washington scores. What isn't so much of a roller coaster is how many points they give up. 140 to Cleveland, 130 to Atlanta, 104 to Brooklyn, that's the low, 132 to Toronto, 127 to Orlando, 129 to Golden State, 117 to Portland, 143 to Sacramento, and 112 to Phoenix. Team total is 124.5 for Cleveland. They do need to score a little bit more than their overall average, but they just scored 140. Washington gives up 126.5. Unless Cleveland goes absolutely ice cold from the field, I think we get over this. Cavaliers over, team total 124.5 at -130, 1.3 units down on the Cavaliers team total up against Washington. Again, you want to bet just the straight over 240.5. I don't mind it. If your book doesn't have team total for the Cavaliers, you can just bet the over. I don't mind it, but I'm going to bet team total Cleveland because I am a little concerned about Washington. Second time around, if they score 100 points, the game may not go over. So you could have, they could score 130, and it's 130 to 100, and then you're not going over. You want to lay 10 points? You can do that if you want. You can lay the 10 points with Washington. That is just a little scary with double digits. Washington is 11-8 ATS on the road. That's why I don't want to touch it, okay? Cleveland's 8-9-1. So maybe we get a 130 to 120 type of game, which is possible. Game would go over there, but we don't get a cover. We get a push, 10 points. So that's why I'm staying away from the double digits, laying that with Cleveland. I like the team total of the Cavaliers, a little bit easier bet, over 124.5. And finally, one hockey game for us, and I've been, speaking of ice cold in the NHL, but the Devils are, overall, the Devils are the second best team. Well, they're the best team. They're number one in the NHL to the over. They're 24-11-1. Red Wings are 24-13-1, but 24 wins, 11 unders, 24 overs, 11 unders, and 1 push for the Devils. At home, New Jersey is 12-6. Only the Dallas Stars, who went under last night at home, they're 15-5. Only the Stars have more overs for home games than New Jersey does. And on the road, well, Chicago's not like unbelievable on the road. They're 9-2 to the over, but the goaltenders should make you feel pretty good. Vanacek is going for the Devils. Now, Vanacek, in his last game against the Bruins, gave up 5 goals on the road. I think he's at home. At home, 3 goals. Last time out, 5 against the Bruins on the road, 3 at home against Columbus, 2 at home against Detroit, 4 against Edmonton, 3 against the Flyers. We're not seeing the number one here for Chicago. It's not going to be Blackwood. And I know it's on a back-to-back, and they lost 4-1 last night, so that may be maybe a little bit scary. They lost 4-1, and the game went under to the Ravens. The Rangers. They're on a back-to-back. But when you're seeing backup goaltenders, and it's Soderblom's supposed to. He's expected, okay? If he plays, if he's out, it's not going to be him. This bet probably, you should make this bet. I already made it because I bet overnight, but he's expected. He's 1-8 on the road with a 4.38 goals against average. On the road for Soderblom, his last time out, gave up 2 goals to Nashville, gave up 2 goals in relief in an 8-1 loss to Dallas, gave up 6 goals against St. Louis in a 7-5 loss, and 7 goals against Seattle in a 7-1 loss for his last 4 road games. This guy gives up goals. Number 1 over team. Vanacek going here for the Devils and Soderblom in net for the Blackhawks. We're going over 6.5. Over 6.5 at -120 for Chicago and New Jersey. I'm surprised that number is not 7, but we're going to go over 6.5 there at -120 for the Devils and the Blackhawks. Okay, so 3 official plays here today on a Friday. Big football tomorrow. NFL Saturday, NFL Sunday. A lot of good things to get into here for us with those games, player props and whatnot that we'll talk about later on the pod tomorrow. But officially, Philly -6, 1.1 units. Cavaliers team total over 124.5, -130. Devils over 6.5 against Chicago at -120. Okay, so -110, -120, -130 bet for us here on. And again, if you want the extra stuff, I like Purdue -9.5. I like UConn -5.5. Celtics team total first half over, and Pacers over 262.5. I have no idea what to do with that game, but you can't bet under. I told you, no more betting unders for the Pacers. My name is Matt Perrault. Follow me across all socials at Sports Talk Matt every morning. The Daily Juice Podcast is being brought to you by OmahaSteaks.com.